and so rare these days. Subverting your expectations is just, you know, that thing you love. Well, what if it was shit? And it's like,
Yes.
no, don't subvert my
Yeah, but to
expectations
me,
like this.
Welcome back to Foreplay. Today is the final episode in our Paul Thomas Anderson arc. Gotta say, many of you from the comments that we received appear to be struggling with this director, which is kind of the point. We've indulged ourselves a little bit in this one with meandering character pieces that sometimes don't even really have much of a plot. It's more about quality dialogue, very small scenes, and excellent acting. So if you've made it this far, you probably are going to enjoy yourself with The Phantom Thread, which is our final movie. But before we get into that, we do need to talk about our next arc. And we decided on something a little bit different, which is a concept where we, in our infinite classiness, after all, we named this show Foreplay, are going to call Spit Roast. And what this means is that each of us have picked a movie that we like individually, but we are confident that the other two people will absolutely abhor. And of course, that only means that we have 3 movies. So the fourth movie, we have gone through a list of Roger Ebert 4-star films and selected one that he liked that we know we don't like to roast Roger Ebert, who is now deceased.
From beyond the grave. Fuck you, you dead hack.
So, as a result, the movies that we will be watching, the one for me that will be going first is The 13th Warrior. The one for Thorin will be Revolver, which is second. The one for Richard will be The Beast Must Die, not the modern TV series, the one from the 70s. And the one for Roger Ebert is the truly astoundingly bad and somehow given 4 stars film 500 Days of Summer, which I am really not looking forward to watching it again because I found it so enraging the first time I watched it.
Yeah, I'll say this. It's probably going to be better than Batman Returns, maybe.
No.
Maybe. No, I think it might be. I mean, like, your brain is fucked up. You enjoy things like Batman Returns. On some
I don't.
level.
I do not. What are you talking about? I thought that movie was garbage.
You love cheese, man. Like, I can't do it. Like,
guilty pleasure, yeah, sure.
Yeah, exactly. Like, like me and Duncan were just flat out wrong. We just remembered it wrong.
Yes.
We just had that. Our reality just got warped through the prism of nostalgia. You sat there and you were probably going, I mean, it is kind of funny. I mean, she is wearing a cat suit in that. And
no, I thought it was terrible. What are you talking about? I was literally sitting there with my wife going, this movie is terrible.
Well, on the plus side, like 500 Days of Summer. I mean, I can't wait. I can't wait. Roger Ebert's had this coming a long time.
I mean, as an American who was like coming of age when this movie was released, and you know, when I was in college, and like it was this whole era of films with like Garden State and 500 Days of Summer, with the manic pixie dream girl that was thought of as super attractive to everybody except for me.
Everything
apparently.
with Zoe Deschanel, exactly. Yes. Exactly.
Yeah, it was terrible. It was a terrible time, and because this was all about like college age or slightly older young people, it was made to basically appeal to my demographic, and I thought that was truly miserable. Everything about this movie.
You know, the premise goes that in Guantanamo Bay they were playing all like heavy metal music and stuff to tilt you. Like the joke is, this is what they'd have to play to like get me and break me. If they kept showing me this film, I'd break about half an hour in me. You know what I mean? Like it'd be too much. I can't take it. I can't handle it. I actually almost scientifically hate everything about that film. So I'm actually looking forward to it, like Richard, because I'm just going to go in and hate it.
I haven't watched it, so I had an ex who thought this film was the best. And she was one of those media girls. You know what I mean? She worked in media. She had a very like prominent media job. I was a media twat right then, like 1 foot in on esports, 1 foot out. Didn't know where I was gonna go. And she thought the movie. I must have watched it like half a dozen times with her. Hated it every single fucking time. But yeah. Let's watch 500 Days of Summer again, darling. Like fuck me. So I haven't watched this film in like Shit, when would that's like 2014, 2015, yeah,
Yeah.
2014. So I ain't watched it in 10 years, for obvious reasons. So I'm dreading it. And fuck Roger Ebert for giving it 4 stars.
Especially in the context of all the movies on this series that we have done,
Oh,
and
yeah.
he'd be like 2 stars, like the
Yeah, no.
miserliest cunt of
Yeah.
all time. I know. And this is your 4 stars.
The
Roger,
thing is
you
a
know.
gross out, disgusting physical horror. 500 Days of Summer is a wonderfully charming
know.
Masterpiece.
That's all meant with it. The dissonance is killing me.
America's leading film critic, ladies and gentlemen. So, you know.
Well, anyway, so there you go. There's our list. Each of us does truly like the movies that we selected, so it will be funny to have the other people go in on them. Hopefully. I haven't actually seen your 2 films yet, so maybe I will actually like them. I picked I would say the most mainstream film of all of them. But anyway, well, besides 500 Days of Summer, that's probably the most mainstream film. Anyway, you guys can look forward to that in our next arc. But first up, let's finish PTA with the Phantom Thread. If you guys thought The Master was weird, if you guys thought that Paul Thomas Anderson was just getting more and more divorced from
absolutely hate it. Yeah.
You know, normal everyday life. You know, we got it with Magnolia, where there were some interesting characters, and we did the jump forward, and all of a sudden we have Freddie Quell and definitely not L. Ron Hubbard, instead Lancaster Dodd, talking about Scientology and this cult. Now we're into extremely strange people doing extremely strange things in the Phantom Thread, loosely, dressed in the guise of high fashion, starring Daniel Day-Lewis.
Which it absolutely is not about. This film's great because it's actually really good that we did it as a follow-on from The Master, because I think it's actually a very good companion piece. I think there's a lot of overlapping and interwoven themes, and the fundamental differences between the 2 movies are ultimately the protagonist and what they are about. If you think about Freddie Quell, who is like some sort of fucking PTSD addled alcoholic maniac who's kind of a slave to his whims.
Yeah, chaotic drifter, if you will. This is the whiplash of like ultimate control, male dominance. With Daniel Day-Lewis.
Reynolds Woodcock is actually someone who isn't. Well, you got to love his character names. Reynolds Woodcock is actually not a slave to his whims. Quite the opposite. He's very tightly wound. He's methodical, almost to a point of, obsessive compulsive disorder. Everything has to be done at the right time, in the right way. There can be no deviation. Even when his girlfriend tries to do something nice and spontaneous, he sees it as an assault, an invasion into his world where he is the master of his domain. And so ultimately, they're about very similar things, just told from the opposing viewpoint, which isn't to diminish this and say, oh, PTA tried to make the Master again, because that would be incredibly reductive as to what this film is actually about. What I love about this movie, and indeed it was how we set it up for you, me and Duncan, we said it's about one thing until it isn't. And so you have an hour of this movie going, this is just going to be some horrible
turn this movie off
rom-com.
half an hour in, you'll never get the movie. You won't even know what it was about. Yeah,
exactly. And you're probably thinking, oh God, it's sad to see Daniel Day-Lewis reduced to this Downtown Abbey light rom-com nonsense. But
like a
1 hour
situational comedy, like in the 1950s, right?
Yeah. Also, as well, I mean, I don't know if this movie is maybe as broadly comedic as The Master, but it has comedic beats. It really does.
The first time she's scraping the fucking thing off the toast. if that isn't funny to you in a dark way, you're not going to get this movie. By the way, two things at the start. One, the reason I knew, because I was actually shocked. I read some of those comments on the other ones. Like, for me, look, maybe people might not like Hard Eight. They don't know it. They're not conditioned to think it's a great film. But the idea people were hating on Magnolia and The Master, it's like, bro, this ain't the series for you. So I knew if they don't like that, they are going to hate this movie. And I'll tell you one reason why. Because the first time I watched this movie, I didn't like it. I had a very strong negative reaction. And one of the reasons why is because I actually think in this film, when I first watched it, I was watching like in a traditional, like, I want to know the plot. I want to know why this guy's doing this. I want to know what happens. Like, where's this going? Like, it's just meandering, you know, and then it's like they're almost like bringing the tension down again. It's going back to everyday things. There's scenes that don't always seem connected. I remember thinking like by the end, and also, we'll get to this later, but I just found the like sort of twist at the end. I found it like kind of abhorrent. Like I found it kind of gross or whatever. But I have to say, when I rewatched it a second time, it's really good. Like if you do love Daniel Day-Lewis, like just his performance alone, you can just bask in. It's so masterful. The joke, by the way, is if he hadn't have called the other film that, this could have been called The Master. They could actually call this film The Master. That would be a great name for it. Because again, it's about like who's in control and what is control about and why would someone want to be overbearing over people and have people under them, etc. So no, there's so much going on in this film, I think. So much.
Yeah. So go on, Christopher. Let's do the despicable summary.
This is a pretty easy movie to summarize because, like, a lot of, this actually has more of a plot to it than I would say Magnolia and The Master did overall. And also because it is the actual, like those other films, is still based around the scenes that are being given and like the long pauses and the dialogue and the acting. But basically, as we mentioned, Daniel Day-Lewis plays Woodcock, and Reynolds Woodcock, who is a fashion designer in the 1950s in London. He is, engaged in very custom couture, so custom high fashion for a variety of very wealthy patrons. And so he is very fussy and fastidious, as we might think a fashion designer would be. He is easily bored, we learn, with his girlfriends, and so kind of kicks one out of his life and then immediately starts hitting on I guess they don't actually say, but German waitress, I would assume, German speaking, let's put it that way, waitress named Alma at a restaurant. And he's very charming when he wants to be, and he can really just like layer it on thick. So he kind of baits her into this relationship, love bombs her, treats her super well, and then she moves in with him. And most of the rest of the film is just about their bizarre interactions as he gets increasingly more controlling. She tries to do nice things for him, like make him dinner. He then flies off the handle because he doesn't like his asparagus cooked in butter. And it's disruptive to his entire day. And basically, he also has his sister around all the time. He is unmarried. He basically disavows the concept of marriage at the start of the film and just wants his, side piece to entertain him, and kind of function as his muse for his clothing. And of course, also the women he is with love when he makes them beautiful, and he does have an amazing eye, and the costumes in this movie are incredible, and it won an Academy Award and absolutely deserved it. It really is fun and beautiful to look at in terms of not only the cinematography, but the actual costumes and what they do with, it's very believable that he is a very accomplished, high fashion designer. And so at the end, towards the end, basically Alma then decides that it is time to start poisoning him with mushrooms that she has foraged in the forest, in order to weaken him and kind of like make him okay with not being in control all the time and have power over him. And this results in a very memorable and unique scene at the end of the film in which she makes an omelet for her second round of poisoning him with mushrooms, in which he intentionally eats because he himself is now like turned on by the loss of control and wants to marry her now. So basically it just highlights the kind of like super toxic, fucked up nature of their relationship, where it's a constant battle between his need for control and his like almost fetish of losing control in the end as well. So it's very weird. And it, at the end of the day, is not really about, like you say, it's not a historical drama or a historical black comedy or satire about the fashion industry. It is a very strange look at a relationship between some really neurotic people and kind of exploring how ultimately both physically and emotionally unhealthy it is for both of them.
By the way,
Yeah,
I would even say for this one, I would characterize this film like this. This is almost like Paul Thomas Anderson channeling like David Cronenberg or something, because there's such like a dark element to it. Like I say, like initially it actually was very shocking to my system, this like plot to it, especially like you say, Monty. It's the way at the end he like embraces it. I thought from the way the movie was going, the first 2/3, it's going to be that like actually the reveal is he doesn't know she intentionally poisoned him, and that'll be like in one of those American high school movies where, you know, you do the bet to date the woman and you're going to love her, but then when she finds out you didn't really mean it, it ruins the whole. I thought it was going to be like that, and so instead the idea he like essentially, because he sort of like warms to the idea of like her being in control. So, but the fact he actually embraced it, I thought was a very dark ending.
Kiss me, my girl, before I'm sick.
But I agree with Richard. If you actually like refer back though, there's so much like in the actual like plot of like the dynamic of the relationships between the two. And that's super interesting, I think. Like I do think, by the way, it's funny that you laugh at the name like Reynolds Woodcock, because that's another thing about this movie that is pitch perfect, is they have nailed exactly the kinds of names people would have at that era. It's incredibly British film, but of a past stage. It's almost like a relic of a past on age. And the difference is actually, unlike things like Downton Abbey, which will sometimes flex like modern sensibilities and silly things like that, this tries very much like, the joke is, if this was in black and white, you could believe this was a film for like 1950 or something. This looks like it's got the tone of it. Even some of the things people will find boring. It's not a Hollywood thriller. It's not one with like beat after beat after beat, and it's taking you through, and the story's really obvious. There's a lot of, by the way, there's loads of scenes, because Daniel Day-Lewis is another mega actor, and here's a sign of a mega actor. They're not in a rush. They just ease into it. They have time. There's silence. The silence is in this film. Everything. This guy's face is he is a master. Daniel Day-Lewis. What a fucking amazing performance. And if people don't know, it's his last performance so far. He might never do another film.
Well, he won't. He's retired, right? Unless he comes out of retirement.
He's done that before.
Sure.
He's done that at least twice before.
But I mean, this is it. Now, he never did that many films.
Have you ever heard this story? Because it actually will tie into this film. Have you ever heard the story of how he came out of retirement?
No.
I forget which actor it was, but some famous actor, like someone like whoever was in one of his films, one really famous actor, had to go to Italy where he was living as a literal shoemaker, Monty. He was like an artisan shoemaker, and they had to convince him to like come out of retirement. It might have been PTA, I don't know, but and someone had to convince him to come. I think it was There Will Be Blood was the one he did and came back for. I forget which exact film.
I think it was actually it might have been, I think it was the Scorsese one. It might have been Gangs in New York.
It could be Gangs in New York. Oh, it might be. I think it was Leonardo DiCaprio. I think Leonardo DiCaprio was the one who went and did this. And got him to do Gangs in New York, right? So the point is that even ties into this film, because I'll tell you what, I guarantee he's channeling some of how, if you think how Daniel Day-Lewis the actor is, I guarantee, think about it, he is a method actor, guys. You can't go to this guy on the set afterwards and go, "Hey, Dan, great scene." He'd be like, "What are you talking about? I'm about to do another scene. You get away." He must be like this character. I guarantee it. He seems like a guy where he knows exactly what he needs to get his 10 out of 10 performance. And I'll guarantee if you fuck with him on the set, he's one of those guys who fucking ruin you. And also think about being like an artisan shoemaker as your like craft that you're gonna do after you. That's basically what he's doing in this film. So I think he's even like doing some of the shit that who he is to some degree on this one.
Famously, Daniel Day-Lewis would, he learned butchery to do Gangs of New York. He learned how to do women's fine fashion, dressmaking to do this movie. Right. He spent a year training to do that. So, this is why he hasn't done very many movies, is because part of his method acting is that he actually trains in various disciplines very seriously for a considerable length of time, just as preparation for the movie. And I was surprised because I heard that this was his last film. I had not seen it prior to us selecting PTA for this arc. And I never really understood after, this guy was doing Last of the Mohicans and, There Will Be Blood and Lincoln and all of these other movies, like why he would pick this one where he wanted to be a fashion designer kind of eluded me. But now when you watch it, you're like, oh, he read this script and it's like actually a super banger. It's just, it's something very different than what it looks like on the surface. And it does give him an immense ability to show off his acting skills and do something really unique.
By the way, if
Yeah.
anyone isn't from the UK, another thing that's very subtle is even when they just show you the shots outside his house, that is in the most expensive part of central London. If anyone from the UK will know this immediately, but maybe an American won't see it. Like those are the houses where they're so old, Monty, and so expensive. They're all the ones where like every other house has a plaque on the front, like, you know, this famous politician lived here, and it's like this. Even when you just see the aesthetic of the way that has that staircase, like, I guarantee the whole point, as you see, is he's in high society. This guy would be making fucking mad money making these dresses, and it's clear he is sort of like he's the master of doing this shit. Like everyone has to come to. Notice also everyone comes to him, and his whole shit is he dictates everything that happens in his life. That's why it's such an interesting film to me, because there's so much psychologically we can dive into on this one. I feel like obviously the performance is masterful, but I actually think this is such an understated performance, even though a lot of like the emotion is wrought at times and it gets to a really high intensity. It's very, very subtle, his performance, I think. Like, and also, by the way, what an amazing job he does with like the sort of idioms you'd use back in Britain back then. Like, everything's so on point. Like he's nailed it. Like he's nailed the whole vibe and the tone, which is why, by the way, it's very clever, as you say, Monty, that this like presumably German woman in the story, well, half of her problem is she clearly isn't British, and because she's like always the outsider and the different one, contrasted against him, she does always seem like she's fucking up, or she's never welcome, or she's always like slightly like on the outskirts, etc. Like even that just ambiance.
It's also the class difference because she's a fucking
Yes.
waitress, and he is one of, if not the most famous
Remember,
fashion
Monty,
designers in the world.
Not even at like some big restaurant. She's just a waitress, like some shitty like fucking pub in the countryside or
Yeah.
something that you just gone to for like a weekend or something, innit?
Which I always interpreted as quite a deliberate thing. Like, I think it was like, I think it's kind of implied in the movie. He deliberately goes out and seeks for relationships with people like that because he can cut them loose. They're not from high society.
He's not shit what he eats. He wouldn't get in trouble. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so when he's being, I mean, the opening scene, by the way, where he orders the fucking,
Telling, innit?
Yeah, the ultimate breakfast, by the way,
the Welsh rarebit and like all the everything.
It's like when you got the munchies and then sausages, chicken as well.
Yeah,
it just keeps going. It never ends.
A Welsh rabbit with a poached egg on top, please. Not too runny. And bacon, scones.
Which is kind of interesting because I don't know if PTA was going for this, and I don't know if I'm reading too much into this, but actually there's this idea of, and it was in the fourth season of Fargo, I think it is, with the Ewan McGregor characters, and there's the David Thewlis character. There is this semiological kind of coding where people that binge and purge, that's like the control, the bulimic aspect to it. Okay. So the idea of this incredibly stick-thin guy ordering a breakfast, I couldn't fucking sink the breakfast he's ordering, by the way. This is like a 3,000 calorie breakfast he is ordering, and he is like that up and down. And there is this thing where it's like PTA films are filled to the brim with little character details that they never explore. It's just a richness. It's just who they are. And I always read from the way he's ordering the breakfast, like he's probably going to go and fucking yoik that up later with 2 fingers because he doesn't want to get fat. I mean, he works in high fashion anyway, where a world where image and artifice is pretty much all of it. And so I always read immediately like he's having this incredibly flirtatious, breakfast order with this waitress. He's incredibly suave, sophisticated. He's got designs on her. She's the same breakfast, essentially. She's breakfast.
You look beautiful. Really. Very beautiful. You're making me extremely hungry.
He's gonna eat her, and throw her up later as well.
Right. And I think that's a great, because the film starts with him with his other girlfriend and basically his sister who controls the business end. She's there at breakfast. He's like, well, it's time to, basically they're like, oh, it's time to get rid of this one. And then he immediately goes on the prowl for another one. Right. And so the idea is that he just kind of churns through these women until they become boring to him. And it's part of his whole, it is that he's treating them like a piece of high fashion in a way, which is that they are something to show off and to enjoy for a very short period of time. But just like in the world of high fashion, you don't wear that dress again, ever, right? You wear it to a statement event if you are very wealthy, and if you are seen in that dress again, you have fucked up, basically. So you will spend tons of money on one piece of clothing that you know you're never going to wear again. It's old hat, it's out of style, everybody has seen and remarked on it, and you cannot be seen in that again. You have to come up with a new thing, right? And for him, it's always about the next thing, designing the next dress, having the next girlfriend, which is why he doesn't want to get married.
There's nothing I can say to get your attention aimed back at me, is there?
I cannot begin my day with a confrontation, please.
Think about the opening scene. The opening scene pretty much is this wonderful encapsulation of the Woodcock character, because in the first few minutes he's showing off, he's designed this new dress and he's at a high society function and everyone's talking about the dress. He's not talking about the dress. He's talking about death. He's talking about, like, how the whole thing is, like, ghastly. He doesn't feel well. He's thinking about his mother, all this stuff. And it's kind of like, I think that's super interesting, because it's like, imagine, I think on some level, for all the way he talks and the way he behaves, I do wonder if there is this kind of quintessential sense that he's not fulfilled. That, like, he's dedicated his craft to something that ultimately doesn't matter. He takes it very seriously, but ultimately it's very frivolous. He will design dresses for these wealthy women and make them look amazing, but he makes them look amazing for one function, one event, one moment, and then it's back to months of work, conceptualizing, and ultimately, it's made him a very wealthy person, but I imagine on some level it's very unfulfilling. This is a guy, by the way, that has so many gaps in his life. All he has is his work. Ever since his mother passed away. Yeah. Well, I mean, also, but kind of.
Operates like a handler, though, at that point. I don't even see that as a very warm relationship.
No, I mean, she's very
I don't
stoic.
Yeah, I don't think he loves his sister in like the traditional sense that, like, a normal, well-adjusted person would think. She is an insert for his mother.
I thought it was even implied they were both fucked up from their mother, and, like, because, for example, to skip ahead, that scene later when the dynamic starts to change, when the Alma starts to take control and he wants her to have control. Well, that Cyril character, part of the reason why he warms to the Alma character is the Cyril character basically just sort of tells him, like, just fucking suck it up, sort of, like, just fucking get on with it. Like, she's not particularly warm herself. She doesn't have that. She's kind of like him as a female version to some degree.
I really wish I hadn't heard this till later on, Cyril. It's very unsettling.
Well, chin up.
Yeah, exactly. And yet this is kind of interesting too. We don't actually know what the relationship with the mother was. There's no frame of reference.
We just know she's dead, that's it.
No flashbacks. We just know he adored her, and like, it's kind of interesting. There's a lot of people that will fondly remember relationships with parents after they've gone, when in fact you kind of know, no, it wasn't really like that, because it's like you're almost remaking the life you wish you had. And so, again, there's no way of knowing one way or the other. She might have been an incredibly warm and loving parent, but I would bet against it.
I felt like here's my guess.
Here's why, and like your secret bulimia theory. Let me raise you a secret child abuse theory. Because
okay, good.
Here's my read on this situation, because remember, one of the things that happens when he drinks the mushroom tea the first time is that he starts having hallucinations of his mother in the wedding dress that he made her,
and she's in the room with him. Brilliant scene.
The story that he tells, right, is that, oh, well, his mother was getting married and he slaved away making this wedding dress for her, which, by the way, is a very weird thing for a child to make for their mother, because inextricably, wedding dresses are related to sex, right? And so the idea of you kind of being the substitute father and giving your mother away and like dressing her with the knowledge that she is going to be undressed out of those same clothes is very weird, right? And
in high society at that time as well, think about this: you're a child, your mother's getting I mean, you were either born out of wedlock. It's not explicitly said. So you're either born out of wedlock and you're making a wedding dress for your mother after you're born.
Yes.
Is she marrying your father or somebody else? Or, I mean, divorces sort of didn't really happen in the 50s as well.
I mean, she may have been a widow, right? We don't know, but we don't know if she was marrying his
father. By the way, completely not mentioned.
Which is why, Richard, this is my child abuse theory. Is that basically whether it was a stepfather or his father, so either they were not married for many years after he was born, right, his mother and his father, or we don't know, she could have just his father may have never been in the picture and she found a man, she may have been never married, had the child married a different man later on. But one thing, like, we have to ask, why is she so lionized within his mind? And it's not only consciously, as we'll get into, it's subconsciously, because that's his relationship with Alma, is he's looking for a mother and he's like embracing, he wants to be he infantilizes himself.
The little baby again.
Yes, he infantilizes himself by drinking poison. And like, that's what gets him off. So clearly, like, this mom thing is not just about, it is about his own mother, but it's also about how deeply this affected him into his future relationship.
I think about you all the time. I hear your voice say my name when I dream. Then when I wake up, there are tears streaming down my face.
But my theory, Richard, is like, so why are we focusing on the moment of her wedding where he prepared her? Because it's almost like everything after that was fucking horrible. And we don't know whether she was a bad mother or not, but if she was a passive mother that allowed perhaps him to be beaten by her future husband or something like that, you retreat psychologically before that moment, and you think about how great she was before all of these other things happened. And then it's almost like he has to go back to that point. He has to go back to when he was a child with his own romantic relationship, because he hasn't coped with whatever happened after that.
Well, I don't want to get all Freudian, right? But I would contend this, and I think maybe this is something that's generationally locked away and is no longer true. But I think for us, you will immediately identify with this. I think the most intimate moments with your parent, for boys, their mother, is when you're ill.
Sure.
I think about my own memories. It's kind of weird that, like, actually some of the happier times of my childhood were when I was sick. I was off school, and what my mother would do is she would, let's say I had a vomiting bug or whatever, I was going to be off for 2 days. She would buy me a toy and she would bring it back, and we had like a fold out sofa in the living room, like a lot of working class people do, because you never know when a drunk uncle's going to turn up and not be able to go home. And we would fold the sofa out, and I would be there, and we'd have a bucket for me to be sick into. And my mother would get me a toy, and we'd have the TV on. I didn't have a TV in my room, right? And my mum would bring, "Are you okay? You feel, you've still got a bit of a temperature. Here's some ice. We'll put some ice in. You want a drink? You feeling a bit better? You ready to have some dry toast now?" And you would get this, like, very intimate, kind of, those memories, like,
Sure.
me and my mother aren't close now, but those memories were like proof, if anyone needed, that she actually did love me and she actually did care about me. They're locked away. I'm incredibly fond of them. And I would contend, whether people want to admit that or not, I would say probably a lot of people have that. And a lot of people feel the same way. And I immediately related to this, because when you watch this movie, this is a guy tightly wound, in control. He's in the driving seat. But somewhere in that relationship with his dead mother is a memory of him being babied and nursed. And he is latching onto that and wants to essentially replicate that in this new relationship.
I'll even go one further and say that actually, I have a theory, actually, that'll be a thing that people will understand in modern society. A classic complaint you'll often see online, which, I mean, Twitter and social media is just about complaining at this point in time.
Yeah.
A lot of women will do that thing where they'll go, how come men think they're tough, but when they get a flu, they are in bed for a week,
man.
and everyone, but I had to be back up the next day with my kids. And what they don't get, actually, I think, is what you've just described there, Richard. On some level, you really could get up after 3 days of a flu like a woman would and just go and take the kids. But the point is, you actually, on some subconscious level, I think, want to be babied and be mothered and have a moment where you're not the one who's the provider and the one in control and the one who has to always be the hard one and protect the other. In that moment, you get an excuse. So, of course, you're going to milk it for more than a day. You get a few days where you get to be the one where you need everything brought to you. And as you say, they almost play a motherly role to you and they feed you and nurture you and make sure you're warm. Everything's taken care of. It really is like being a baby again. It's like that famous thing that you'll have heard many times before where people have speculated that one of the reasons people actually become heroin addicts isn't thrill seeking. It's the notion that they're sort of like bliss and lack of pain recreates like being in the womb or something where you're warm and everything's secure, you're safe and everything's provided to you. And you just have this like sort of state of consciousness that's just like, it's there's no danger, you know, you're just safe and you're protected. And people say that's one of the things that people do because obviously they're living a very hard life or they're fucked up. And so that's a moment they can sort of escape to that. Because I also think on this particular topic, I want to do a little thing at the beginning. I think if people have watched the film, will surprise them because I think there's an angle to this they won't appreciate, but I'm sure some of you will in light of the careers that we've had, which is I actually think if people watch this as a plot or they watch it like a TV show where you're like, do I like this character? I don't. I like, I hate that dick. I hope so. If you work that way, you're going to watch the first half of this movie and think, what a prick this guy is. What an arsehole. Why would I want him to? In fact, you know what? I hope the Alma woman does leave him. What a dickhead this guy is. He's being a prick. He's being really cruel with it at times. He like you say, love bombs you at the moment. He can be so charming at the beginning, but when he turns it off, it always reminds me of that line from The Talented Mr. Ripley, where they're talking about the Jude Law character, and Gwyneth Paltrow's character explains to the like Philip Seymour Hoffman guy, because he was like his sort of like flavor of the month friend for a while, that when he loves you, it's like the sun's beaming down on you, but then when he turns away, it's like the sun's gone away and you're just cold and you just I get that vibe from how he treats people. But here's the thing, I wanted to play a bit of defense for that character at the beginning, because before we get into like being a well-rounded person, having support networks, someone you can relate to, well, obviously this guy's whole purpose, and I think for men purpose is like the essential quality of life, is it's to have like a craft and to be excellent at something. I mean, for men, when you put in effort and you become excellent, you get respect, which to me, respect is the currency men live and die off. Women maybe want, I don't know, love or to feel like they're needed. I think for men, you really want to be respected for what you do so that it feels like it's worth it. You're not just a guy who's a cog in a machine doing some bullshit that no one cares about. And so when you see this first half of the movie is about craftsmanship. That's why they're showing so much with the dresses and how particular he is and how, by the way, because all he has, like you say, Richard, is his work. If you fuck with his work, like that woman who tries to go to sleep in that dress, I'll just go fucking take that dress off you, bitch. You don't get to have that dress anymore, because this wasn't just any dress. This is my life, motherfucker. I've given up everything to be the best at exactly this. That's why even though we're in high society, I don't just take all commas. I'll turn you away if I don't think I should do a dress for you. You're not worthy of my dress. So the thing is, to be, even though people will label him an asshole, they don't understand that to be that excellent requires a single-minded focus. The sacrifice, think of the things he's given up, the commitment, by the way, he can't commit to women, but he's committed to the excellence of these dresses and what he's doing, and he's put himself into it. Literally, he's putting secret things that only mean something to him that they will never even discover into these dresses, which also makes sense as to why he feels like he owns them even when he sells it to you. Because you know what? Maybe that dress has like a secret thing about something about his mother or his mindset, and you're just doing it like some throwaway thing. Oh, sorry, I've been sick or something. Like, he can't handle that. And so another angle of their dynamic is, even though people don't want to get into these truths, women are drawn to that type of obsession. It's why the greatest sports stars, it's not just money, it's the fact that they're excellent at what they do, and that is very attractive. And I actually think a thing that will play into the dynamic here goes like this. I do think women left to their own devices, it's why people say they want to change a man. They want someone like that because they enjoy that aspect, but then they want to transmute you into the sort of like man that they think you should be. Like, they want this really open and you're not taking it so seriously, you've got time for your family. So to me, on some level, like, even though he's using her as a muse, I do see it as like she wanted him to just like unlock the personal side, which you obviously can't do before this mushroom experience. So to me, I actually think the part people misunderstand about the first part is, why would she stay? The reason why is because when you're someone who can be loving, you can show that side, but most of the time you don't. Most of the time you're essentially in love with something else. It puts more of a premium on when you're lovely to them and when you show vulnerability and when you care for them. It's why people stay in abusive relationships, because actually it's the opposite dynamic to what you wish it would be from Hollywood movies and Disney films. It's not the guy that's totally lovely from day one and gives you everything that you're super drawn to, because actually he's shown you his love has incredibly low currency. He'll give it to anyone as soon as he gets a relationship with them, and he'll give them absolutely everything of himself and ask nothing in return. Instead, I tell you what's attractive, it's a totally logical concept, is the guy where he might even be a prick to everyone else, but suddenly you're the one who's only the one who gets shown that kindness, that caring. That's going to make you feel really fucking dope. Remember, she's a girl. Think of the scene when she first tries that dress on. She has no self-esteem. She knows she isn't some fucking banger 10 out of 10. She's actually even a very plain looking girl. It's almost like perfect casting for like just a generic German woman. She's not even particularly beautiful. But then when he even in the dress thing is showing like, no, but you're perfect in this way, and I like to, and I'm going to make you beautiful. Again, I think there's so much subtlety to this film.
He also, what I love about that scene too, is that he is simultaneously, I mean, this would be a fantasy for a working class girl like this in a foreign country. This is some Prince Charming shit. She gets swept up into high society by a man who is treating her as if she's the center of the universe, is incredibly charming, is incredibly successful, and on top of that, he is capable of making her more beautiful. I mean, it's the ultimate princess fantasy, effectively. It's like, it's Cinderella shit, you know what I mean? And what I think is so great about that scene too is you start to see kind of the menace that he has, because he is also, while he's doing something to make her more feminine, to make her more beautiful, he is also kind of undercutting her in weird ways and showing his control, because one of the lines is, he's like, you have no breasts.
You have no breasts. 22.
Yes, I know.
32 and a half. You can drop your arm now.
It's not like you have small breasts. It's like, you have no breasts. He's basically calling her not a woman. You know, in that scenario.
And then when she looks like crestfallen, he's like, "No, that's perfect.
That's perfect.
Great.
I can make you have breasts.
I can make
if I want.
If I
and then what I love is he's like, I can make it. You have breasts, and there's like a pause. If I want.
I'm sorry.
No, you're perfect. My job to give you some. If I choose to.
It's like, and what a great delivery.
And the sisters in the fucking room while all this is going on.
Right,
I mean,
but it's almost like you are only a woman if I choose to have you be a woman. And it all gets wrapped up into his very complicated relationship with women in general, with his mother, with Alma, with his infantilization, with his embracing of her, what I would call toxic femininity, which is like cutting a man down just to feel like a mother or feel like a caretaker, which is like really fucked up, right? But I do want to talk some more about, Thorin's point about the master of the craft, because I think that is, I think every man can identify with parts of the performance of Daniel Day-Lewis and Reynolds Woodcock's character, because it is, I mean, it's admirable in some ways how dedicated he is. He is fiercely protective of his time. It's like, that he has to have his breakfast a certain way because he has to get into this mood. And especially as somebody who's creative, he knows what gets him gets the muse going, and he has to be sketching at this time.
If you're at an event, you don't just wake up and do anything random before the thing. You have a process you go through, and sometimes you want to have a bit of time to yourself, or maybe you don't want to talk to a player at breakfast. Even though it'll sound in the moment again like, well, not so, because they're thinking of an everyday interaction. You're getting yourself into a state. I mean, Richard knows this. I've done this consciously. Like in green rooms, I've been harsh to people who were the runners or people who didn't have the food, because I know what I need to be 10 out of 10. Yeah. And if you go give me it and you make me 7 out of 10, but I was trying to give you 10 out of 10, what are we doing? That's always was my perspective. And so the question is the work what the ultimate thing that matters? If it is, then we've got to do everything. We've got to sacrifice everything to that altar.
Yeah. And the end result is, he does make very beautiful things, and he is, but these beautiful things are meaningless. And I think that's the push pull of this, is because I don't hate high fashion. I think high fashion is actually very interesting. But at the end of the day, even if you like high fashion, you do have to admit that it is frivolous and it is pointless and it is meaningless, because but you could say that about a lot of art, right? But it is I think, more derided, and probably rightfully so, because it's the currency of very wealthy people with no other concern besides wearing this dress and looking stunning, and have everybody in high society say, oh, I wish I was in that dress, and cause jealousy and get compliments, and then never wear that dress again. Because it would be gauche, like we said, to appear in it again. Then the rumors start, oh, are they out of money? Why is she appearing in that dress again? Oh, she looks fatter this time around in that dress. You know what I mean? So it's just this very stupid game that rich people play in order to create hype and relevancy around themselves, because they have to have stakes, because there are no stakes in anything else in their lives. They're set for life. So this is the drama they engage in order to feel alive. And it is pathetic, but that is what it is. It is also beautiful in its own way. But I think at the end of the day, he is at a certain level dissatisfied with this, because his craft, to your point, the scene where he has to like get the dress off of the drunk lady, it's like, no, you can't treat it like this, because all of a sudden my beautiful work is being dragged into your high society bullshit. But it's inextricably linked. There, you can never pull those apart as much, even though he tries, right?
Go and take the dress off her and bring it to me right away.
I don't think so.
Take the fucking dress off, Barbara, and bring it to me, or I'll do it myself.
I beg your pardon?
Yeah, and I think as well, I mean, what I really like about the dynamic that he has in this relationship is that it's kind of almost like it's a mirror of what it is he does. Like, so think about it. He is going, like, if you notice, there's that bit with the what title does she have? The slightly older woman, the one they take the dress back from.
Countess, I think.
Yeah, she's a countess, and she's just in floods of tears, saying like, "I'm disgusting and terrible," and he's going, "But no, I'm going to. Don't worry about any of that. I will make you beautiful." No, no. And it's kind of like the relationship is almost like he wants the relationship to be this extension of what he does for every other woman. Like, he wants to make her into something he considers to be beautiful, but she's resistant to that. She doesn't just want to be a throwaway dress. She doesn't want to be this, kind of thing that he wants to create and then essentially get bored of because it's a project. She's saying, like, no, we're not. I'm not going to do that. In fact, I'm going to bring my own things to this particular table, and he fucking hates it. He hates it. He hates
it's
every
also
second
those scenes
of it.
that scene is great because it's a mirror of the scene with him and Alma, where he is not part of high society. He's not a noble, right? And so, in the same way that his relationship Alma's relationship is a servant to him at a restaurant, he is a servant ultimately to these people. And just
there's definitely there is this like very understated contempt, I would even go so far as to say, in that particular scene. I think the way he interacts with the countess.
Yeah, of course he has contempt because she is wrapped up in her own problems, and he has this expertise, and she's not even recognizing that in the moment. She's obsessed with something else. And also, just like a restaurant, later in the film, he has a conversation with Cyril where he is falling out of fashion, and people think that he's kind of old school and like they're over it and they want something more progressive. And it's just like, oh, well, this restaurant isn't cool anymore, so I'm just not going to go there. You know what I mean? Yeah. And like he is very, in spite of his wealth, in spite of him rubbing elbows with these elites, he is still not of that world in the same way that Alma isn't of his world, right? And so we see this kind of like client relationship that's developed at the very high end, but he is still ultimately a servant of theirs in the same way that Alma is a servant of his, and he abuses that power, right?
As far as I can remember, all I have done is to dress her beautifully.
I don't think that matters to some people. I think they want what is fashionable and chic.
Chic? Oh, don't you start using that filthy little word, chic.
Yeah, and there's all these like little telltale signs at almost like when those two women come up to him in the restaurant, and the woman says to him like, we're fans of your work. We hope one day I hope to be able to afford and wear a dress made by you. And he's just like, yes, well, I certainly hope that's something you do one day. And it's like super dismissive, no eye contact. Like it's like such an interesting relationship he has with his work, because ultimately the work opens the doors to be around all these people. And yet ultimately he doesn't accept adoration for the work. The work on a day-to-day basis doesn't really even seem to bring him any joy. It doesn't seem to bring him any happiness. It's just something he does, and something he defines his entire life around, and something that ultimately he judges all relationships through the lens of. Are you going to disrupt my ability to create this fucking beautiful but ultimately meaningless project that's going to get wore once by a member of high society, which I'm not? And so it's like, it's kind of weird, because it's ultimately, yes, it's his craft, it's his dedication, but I think again on some level he understands it's kind of like it's almost an absurdity in and of itself, like what he's dedicated his life to. And I think he's kind of conscious of that. I think he's aware of that. I think the yearning for the mother is almost like it's almost like yearning for just something of substance in his life. It's like he just wants something more to be there that he can anchor and tether himself to. But in the absence of that, well, I've got this. I've got the craft. And so a lot of people have said this movie is like a meta commentary on like the nature of toxic relationships, for example. What it is to be in a bad relationship, and how you have this like weird cyclical feedback of oh, she's poisoning me, but I love it when she does. It's so good. And I think I'm kind of feeling.
I mean, the thing is like it's scratching an itch somewhere inside of him. He's opting into this experience,
sure.
right?
Yeah, sure, but I think to just kind of say the movie's
it's still reductive
about that. Yeah, I it's definitely, there's a lot more going on than just fucking I love it. I love the way she hurts me. It's so good. Bloody
well,
hell.
I think it just I think one of the things it does very successfully, and I think this does tie back into aspects of The Master, is that it shows very extreme masculine qualities. Freddie Quell is, as you pointed out, like very extremely masculine in certain ways, where he is about the fucking and the drifting around and not taking responsibility for his life, and the alcohol / substance abuse, and the total kind of lack of respect for anybody around him. And Lancaster Dodd is the controlling one, and in this case, like, Woodcock is very kind of detail-oriented and fastidious and single-minded in terms of his craft, which are also very masculine qualities. And like that's why I think it's so interesting. You could compare, I think, Alma to Amy Adams' character in The Master as well, which is that Amy Adams is the one who is the power behind the throne. I mean, you get the sense in The Master that she might be the master, or like Lancaster Dodd's master.
Cersei Lannister shit. Yeah, absolutely,
for sure.
Yes.
I mean, she is the power behind the throne. And in this one with Alma, you get that, like I said earlier, that very, I think, insidious side of femininity, which is the desire or the compulsion to weaken those around you so you can very deliberately be a caretaker and fulfill that role. And she does have fantasies.
Well, also the timing of the poisoning is crucial to understanding, because what she's trying to do, essentially, this is again my belief, she's trying to show him that it is okay not to, the world doesn't end if you don't.
I mean, they keep making the dress without him, right?
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. She poisons him in the middle of days before the project. It's got to be completed. It's got to be delivered. And he's the guy. He has to look over every seam and every aspect of it, but he can't. He's in bed.
He also hated that dress. It's worth noting.
Yeah,
he literally says it's terrible.
Yeah,
and then he collapses, and they have to give her the dress he thinks is bad.
It's just not very good, is it? It's ugly.
Yeah, and then the family friend who happens to be the young doctor, you know, they bring him round, and Alma's there, and you know, understand she's poisoned him. She knows why he's ill. The doctor comes in and is going, well, perhaps I could examine you just to make sure that you're all tickety-boo and all of that. And he's going, no, I would like you to fuck off. and Alma's like, I believe he said he would like you to fuck off. And
I admit I do look young. But
Fuck off.
Reynolds, please, just let him examine you.
Yes, fuck off.
I think this is clear. He wants you to fuck off.
Suddenly they're simpatico in this outrageous behavior that's so alien to his life, but like it's like this embracing of, look, it's okay to be chaotic and random, you know, like when she tries to throw him the fucking spontaneous dinner and he fucking hates it, and he's going, why have you ambushed me, why have you brought this to my life?
I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm just waiting around like an idiot for you.
This was an ambush, Alma. To what purpose?
This is not...
And all she's done. Yeah,
By the way,
you know what I want salts on these.
That's like that fucking speech in fucking Apocalypse Now. It's like, are you an assassin?
Yeah.
You're just an errand boy.
Yeah,
That's almost
exactly,
what
yeah.
like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great scene because it's so outrageous, right? His reaction is just so ridiculous that, I mean, it really drives home the whole point of his character and then what Alma does next. I would also point out that in the scene where he knocks over the dress, it is a wedding dress, in fact. And so I think Alma is also resentful because he has basically told her up front, I'm not going to marry you. And he only changes his tune later on. And she has all the fantasies of, oh, we're going to have kids and we're going to have this family life. And what was weird is like, she's like pushing a pram, and even like Cyril, who is just an ice queen in this movie, is like, oh, I love your baby. It's like, it's such a hilariously out of touch fantasy with the characters that are within the movie. I love that.
That's great. I love that scene. Well, I mean, look, also as well, I mean, just a nice little touch is when he gets better again from the first poisoning and kind of does propose to her. I love the way she makes him wait. You know, think about it. The whole you think she's gonna jump at it. She doesn't. And he's going, no, you know, he's on his knees. She fucking drags it out and makes him like, you know, it's like it's a wonderful dynamic that they have.
Alma, will you marry me?
I mean, sure, it's fucked up, but I just love the, like you say, the push and the pull of this particular relationship. That it starts out very much it's his world, he's in control. She finds a way to break that paradigm, and then suddenly she is everything, and. You know, he's happy to engage with something that, as we find out at the end, he understands is ultimately harmful. I mean, by the way, she's replaced all of the other things. She's replaced the mother, the work.
He is an infant in many ways, because I mean, even his asparagus rant is like what a toddler would say. I have toddlers. Yeah. You know what I mean? I have kids.
A very sophisticated
which is basically like
toddler, yeah.
You know, it's like, no, I don't want this chicken nugget. It has to be the shape of a dinosaur. And you're like, fuck you, kid. Like, it's chicken. Just eat it. And it's like, oh, I can't eat this asparagus cooked in butter. It's like, what? It's still like, it's asparagus. It tastes basically the same. And also, who hates butter? It's such a weird complaint, right? But it's that, it's
that
a
goes
need
in
for
line
control.
with how particular he is, though.
It's just a need, but it's a psychological need for control, and this is how small children
I can also tell you, Monty,
themselves over their environment, right?
As I think you know, Alma, I prefer my asparagus with oil and salt. And knowing this, you have prepared the asparagus with butter.
it's also literally a symptom of autism. This guy is one of the most autistic characters ever put on camera. By the way, literally, I had this myself. I just didn't know it when I was a boy because I never went to 21 as a kid to get diagnosed, right? What I didn't realize was I used to be the person who had to sit for hours with like a cold plate, and people thought I was just being rebellious or I was just being... And what they didn't understand is, well, the problem with autism is it's also about like the idea of what the food is going to taste like and what it's like. So, for example, a famous thing autistic people often have, it's made drawn to extremes in things like Monk, if you've ever seen the TV show, is notions like you can't handle things where categories blur. You can't handle like food that's slimy, for example. You want it to be either a solid or a liquid. And when it comes slimy between, so a classic example is you might not be able to eat a banana if it's been a bit squished or it's got a bit of brown on the top.
Like
now, a normal kid might say that just because they don't want to eat the banana, you know. But in this scenario, you're doing it because you can't even face the idea of it. And because you have this expectation to even taste it would be horrible. Even to another person, it's like, just put up with it.
It also explains kind of the sound sensitivity that he might have too.
The autism too. By the way, that's even genius how that's filmed, because if you filmed a normal scene of breakfast, it would always be ambient sound, but they make you experience like him that it's driving him crazy when she's scraping that toast. It's why you see after he recovers from the mushroom when he goes back to his old personality, because it's when they're back at dinner and he can't handle it. She's doing shit again with the food and he's shaking the backgammon and he's right back into that exact frame of mind. I've got a whole take for you, by the way. I actually think the movie also is a metaphor for marriage, because he is the ultimate fucked up bachelor, isn't he? Who maintains control of it and can never actually join with another person and make a separate union. There's that line in the Bible where it says something like, and the man will like leave his mother and father and he will like sort of like merge with his wife and become one flesh. It's the idea that you have to leave your family and all that behind and form a new family with that new person. Well, in this movie, to me, Cyril almost represents, like, she's the person who at that point in his life knows exactly what he needs. She's always right for the first half of the movie, by the way. Every single time someone disagrees with her, they're wrong. She knows exactly what he wants, what he needs. It's even implied to me, maybe she also is playing some like fucking proxy for the controlling mother that he had, who was maybe like distant and harsh, and maybe he had to be excellent in certain things and be smart, and all these things you could infer. And there's even some quotes I'll read for you, which really shows, because that's why that scene with the doctor is perfect, because that is the scene where the real dynamic power struggle happens, and Alma starts to win, and she's the one who's right, and she's the one he agrees with, and he doesn't agree with what the Cyril knows best. Remember, before that, his old so-and-so, she's almost like his handler. Before they introduce who she is, you're not even sure, is this his ex-wife? Was this his mother? Is it an aunt? Yeah. They don't even reveal it's his sister until a little bit in, just as a throwaway line. So I've got some quotes for you that totally play to this. So first of all, the movie begins with that whole thing of like her saying something like, I gave him every part of me or something like that. And then she goes on about how he's a demanding man. And then later on, there's a line where it goes, you see, when you love your work and you can give like he does, you need to come down again. And then he's a baby, like a spoiled baby. And then right at the end of the film, when he's actively going into this and leaning into this aspect, there's a great quote where it says, I want you flat on your back, helpless, tender, open with only me to help. And then I want you strong again. You're not going to die. You might wish you're going to die, but you're not going to. You need to settle down a little.
I want you flat on your back. Helpless. Tender.
Now, what's brilliant, by the way, about that speech at the end, if you think about her phrasing, it's she's talking like him now. That's the way he talked when he was in control. His whole shit's like, you don't want to fight with me, I'll come straight through you. He has that really, like I say, almost like the Apocalypse Now speech. He has a very sort of grandiose way of talking, doesn't he? Where he's really like harsh in some ways. So I thought this was like a very telling film to some degree, because he actually does kind of not just give up certain aspects. He becomes a different person sort of towards the end of the film. With like he knows he can't just be that one guy who's just making the dresses all the time.
How do you feel about it as an allegory or a metaphor, rather, for the creative process? I think because a lot of people, like this movie,
that's another part of the way about being an asshole. Richard is another thing. I think this is why PTA probably fucks with this. There's a reason why the auteur is held up as the ultimate like avatar of the director, because even though people want to believe cooperation produces the best, no, cooperation is great for society because we need to live and have children. If you want to make art, you want a singular vision. You want the Steve Jobs guy who says, "Shut the fuck up, get the guy out of the office now." You want the guy where you have to be very demanding, and to go on some like Fountainhead Iron Ranch. Everyone else is going to go, hey, stop being so uptight, man. Like, let us have our say. We want to be creative too. And it's like, well, then you fuck off, mate. We don't do this by committee. No, I saw part of it as that, as well. And the problem with that is, by the way, that mindset doesn't work for family. Family's the opposite. You have to turn that mode off. You have to be giving. You have to compromise. You have to do what they want sometimes. You have to not have things perfect for you, which I would say is the opposite. Like I was describing about work, for the state to be great at work. So it's always a dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, there's definitely a reading on this because it's kind of interesting. When the movie first came out, I mean, I urge you to go and read some of the think pieces around this movie.
I don't think I want to.
We need a total ban on American journalists until we figure out what the hell is going on. Because
this movie came out in
this movie-
2017, so
Yeah, well, exactly. Right at the height of the culture war bullshit. A lot of the think pieces about this movie it's an ode to toxic masculinity. I don't even know how you can read it.
So here's the thing, Richard. I think a lot of men looking at this movie and are like, admire him in some ways, not obviously in all of the ways, but in terms of his craftsmanship and his dedication. I find it very admirable.
Yeah, no, and I get that, but equally as well, I mean, if I mean, you shouldn't think about the movie this way. It's really dumb to think about it this way. But if you were to think about it as a power dynamic between the two people, which that's not what it is, but if you were, you would ultimately have to conclude that by the end she has triumphed, right?
Oh yeah.
So there were a few little smatterings in there. I read one when I was kind of researching this, and it was what was it? It was an ode to incels. I'll link you that one. Yeah, I know.
What?
And it's like
he's definitely not an incel. He's like very charming.
Monty,
Woodcock.
incel is the same as Nazi. Nazi means I don't agree with you and you're not left wing. Incel means you're a man I don't like. That's all it means in the The word means nothing anymore, mate.
Because like clearly he goes, even in this movie, it's shown that he's going through multiple women, and like the ease at which he attracts women is remarkable.
Charming. That's an incel wouldn't be like he is at the beginning of that. Like, by the way, even his understanding of like actually how women think, like that playful banter. Well, you get a lot of trouble. Maybe I want to be in trouble. He understands what he's doing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I read some terrible pieces about this, but the thing that I kind of settled on, because obviously with PTA he's always saying something about something else, like there will be blood, for example. It works as a story in and of itself, but he is talking about the rise of the oil industry, big business, and its place in American history, and its interplay with religion, and how these two things function as core elements of American society throughout history. And it's the same with the Master. It's not really about Scientology, but the Scientology lens is a good way to view what is it to have uncontrollable desires, suppressed desires, to have needs, to have wants,
to live outside of society.
Yes, exactly. To live on the fringes, and ultimately, even when you're living within society, to find ways to create, these little enclaves of lawlessness to yourself. And so, PTA films are really smart in the sense that they always work on a story level, but they're obviously saying much more profound things and broader things. And, I always viewed this as kind of like what it is to connect to the muse, to connect to what it is that inspires you to create things. And she is that muse, because ultimately,
definitely.
Ultimately, what happens is with any relationship to art, eventually you are going to hit a wall. You are going to realize, I haven't got it anymore. I had it, but I don't have it now. I'm out of time. I'm out of creativity. I need a new, I need a new way to think about things, or I'm going to fade into irrelevancy. And so ultimately, when you have a relationship with the creative process that you love, that you've given yourself over to, it does start to poison you. It starts to break you down. And so, you want to create something as good as that thing you created back then. You want to get back to that, what people are saying is your peak, your masterpiece, whether it's an article you wrote, or a book you wrote, or a poem you wrote, or a painting you created, or a sculpture, whatever it might be. You want to replicate that excellence, but that's just not feasible. You don't get to do it. And so the creative process itself, this thing you have given yourself over to, this thing you love, this thing you adore, this thing you cherish, it starts to poison you and erode your soul. And I do wonder if this is like a little sly wink to the audience and to critics even about what it is to make films, what it is to make movies, what it is to, remember, there are people out there who say PTA peaked with Boogie Nights. So imagine being the director and it's like, yeah, but I did create a modern masterpiece with There Will Be Blood. But okay, I guess Dirk Diggler is my quintessential contribution to society, right? Like PTA, I imagine like PTA is definitely saying something about the artistic process with this film. I certainly read it that way. And I think by the end, the reason I always see this as a happy ending, as kind of fucked up as it is with the Munchausen by proxy kind of, storyline, is he makes peace with it. He makes peace with the fact he's not going to be current. She's in his life. That's okay. That's good. His art isn't going to be as relevant. His dresses aren't going to be as good. But hey, it's okay. Every few months, I get to take this little fucked up holiday where she doses me with poisonous mushrooms and I get to lie in bed, puking and shitting in a delirious state, being babied and infantilized. I don't need the high pressure. I've done the good stuff. I'll always be remembered. And now I just get to be this. And that's great. It's like it's for the Zoomers, it's the embracement of being washed.
It's also, I think, we get the sense that he is now going to have his own desires be subservient to hers, because her goal now is to have a family and like enjoy this family life with him, have kids, and like that is you get the sense that takes primacy within their cohabitation existence at that point in time as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's like I say, it's like you can only give so much of yourself over to a craft, to anything you truly love, before there's diminishing returns. And, we know this. We know this from every piece of art we consume. Do you have a favorite actor? Do you love 80s Robert De Niro? That same guy is in Rocky and Bullwinkle, right? Like there are diminishing returns on greatness. You can only.
It's dope that Daniel Day-Lewis didn't do that. He never ever went into that world. He kept it pure. Yeah.
Well, I mean, also, what a fantastic choice on that basis. Now, look, I'll say something controversial, which not everyone's gonna fuck with. No one's but I'm just gonna say it. I think in terms of like output, I think Daniel Day-Lewis, his peaks are fantastic. He's definitely done some garbage. Like I know that's not because people remember he had a run coming out of the 90s that's really, really strong. But actually, if you go a little bit further back, I mean, outside of My Beautiful Laundrette and My Left Foot, what are we really talking about?
I mean, I'll have a hot take for you, Richard. I didn't particularly like him in Lincoln. I thought he was cheesy as fuck.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, I think that's always. I think playing historical characters is always difficult,
fraught.
And
Sure.
yeah, exactly. Not every actor can pull that off. Like for example, I'll be honest. I didn't particularly fuck with his Lincoln in the same way I didn't really fuck with Gary Oldman's Churchill all that much. Actually, I didn't think it was great. I thought it was functional. I thought it was okay. It was a broad caricature.
I mean, the thing is, though, in Lincoln, he like sometimes looks like a caricature of Lincoln, and it feels really.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But maybe that's okay when you play.
I mean, it's a bit different, I would say. Like the thing about Lincoln is we don't have any recordings of him. You know what I mean? So it's a bit different to Churchill, but it's like
always going to be interpretive. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it was. Sure. I thought the whole Lincoln thing was really quite weird.
The problem with the Lincoln one is it almost inherently couldn't be a Daniel Day-Lewis performance because they could never put the real Lincoln, even the facts, on screen. Yeah. That is one of the most mythologized, fake-ass Fugazi characters ever in history. Like the joke is, here's the best this joke is so perfect if you understand it. He's the Obama of his era. There you go. If you like facts, you're gonna fucking hate these guys. If you like the fantasy movie version, they're the best guys of all time. So the problem was he was playing the American dream of fucking Lincoln, not the real Lincoln. You know what I mean?
True. Yeah.
So I felt like they never could give him that much depth because he couldn't do all the darker parts and all the crazy shit that guy said. So I'm with you though. The problem is he also does that thing though, Richard, where I'm almost certain. I think this is why this is his last film. I think he also did that thing that I do think great actors do, which is it's not always that every script's amazing. It's like you just want to work with that director. Like when I look at some of the pieces of works he's done that I think is shit, it's like, oh, you just want to work with that what you didn't really believe this script was like There Will Be Blood, dude. You just wanted to work with that guy or some other actor or something like. I think some of his choices. A difference is though, I don't believe any choice is a sellout one. There's no Rocky and Bullwinkle for him. You know what I mean? There might be a film you don't fuck with the character, but he never sold out to me or did just 3 years a movie to buy a restaurant or whatever some of these other guys do, or Alma.
I mean, like he's got like a fucking really good, hasn't done a lot of films really for an actor of his tenure.
Yeah. People will be shocked from the 90s on. It's really sparse.
Yeah, but I mean, like if you look at the directors he's worked with, I mean, I'm pretty sure he only did Lincoln. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he only did Lincoln because he gets to work with Spielberg, right? Like that's why you do that. Film.
I mean, also being Lincoln is something he would want to do. You know what I mean? That's a unique part.
Maybe. Maybe. I mean, listen. Remember, these fucking staunchly. I did all them fucking Jim Sheridan movies, mate, about Irish history. He's fucking. He's very much into. That identity aspect of himself.
Oh, there was an era when Name of the Father would have been like one of the most famous films for this guy. Absolutely. That's what he associated with at one point. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah. And so, but like he's worked with some of the best, directors that have ever been. He worked with Michael Mann, Last of the Mohicans. People forget Michael Mann did that movie. And so I get it. It must be nice to be able to like pick and choose. But I will just say, ultimately, he is a guy with an incredibly high peak, but he has done some, weak films. And so back to the point, I think this idea of craft and excellence, I think, is central to the film. In a way that, like, obviously the Master isn't really about that. In fact, the artistic character in the Master is a fucking hack. He's making it up. His books are terrible. It's an excuse for a religion. In this film, the artistic character is obviously the protagonist, and he is excellent at what he does.
And the aesthetic,
incredible cost.
Yeah, the aesthetic also comes through in this film, and one thing we can talk about is the cinematography, and as I alluded to earlier, the costuming. Because if they fucked up the costuming here, the movie's over, right? He has to be a believable top end, couture designer, bespoke couture. And like to get that look is really hard, guys, because you have to be as good as the people who really do that. And then you have to photograph it super well. You have to light it super well. It has to feel like high fashion of the era. You have to do all the research on what were the kind of designs that were in the 1950s. But this just looks amazing. And I think it helps that the Master also took place in the same period. So he's used to working in this period, you know what I mean? And used to the aesthetic. But it really did feel like, the version of the Master that's in the European continent, right? I know the end of the Master is also in England, but it does feel like, you got the American department store side, like high-end department store side in the Master. And now you're getting the private world of European nobility and high fashion. And it feels so well made. I mean, the cinematography is just breathtaking. The way they show you the dresses, like it's just beautiful to look at the whole film.
I loved the scene where they're photographing Alma in the dress, and you see the transformation. Of her, because remember she's. This sounds awful. I'm trying to say this in a way that's not going to get me branded a misogynist. She's not traditionally beautiful.
She's not. She's very plain.
Yeah, and I mean, listen. not judging her on that basis. It's just
it's important that she is actually playing into the concept of the film. It's
when
good
you
casting.
cast people, when you cast people, you know, you want to get people who look a certain way so they fit a certain archetype, and it was essential that she was a little bit down to earth, a little bit girl next door. You know, that's key to the initial spark of the relationship and this idea that he's going to beautify her. And I love it. I love it when she gets the dress. By the way, the dress.
It also makes her character arc
stunning.
believable because she's a woman who probably wants to feel beautiful. If she was gorgeous, like women who are gorgeous know that they're gorgeous, and they're not like, "Oh, you're charming me by making me feel even more beautiful." That's not how they operate. They know they're hot.
And so what I loved about it was just this. I mean, and again, the part where they connect. With that wonderful scene where it's actually her idea to go and get the dress back for the woman, and she says she doesn't deserve it. She doesn't deserve to wear a dress made by you. And then obviously, you know, we've seen her in the dress. We see her in the dresses.
She doesn't deserve it.
It's your work.
It's like, and it shows that she appreciates his art, like, and how it's important to him and how it defines him. It's like, it's the most connected outside of the poisoning that they are, which is so fucked up, but it's great. So yeah, I mean, look, I think in terms of the way this movie looks, the aesthetics of it, it had to be aesthetically beautiful given the subject matter of the film, and the dresses actually, I mean, they it's such a, given how deep the story of the movie is, it's such a like minor part, but it's such an important part. This movie does actually look great on top of everything else, and it does play an important role. Like there are key scenes where if the dresses look shit, the movie wouldn't work. It wouldn't
exactly
have the resonance. It wouldn't have the impact. So and as I said, when she's wearing that dress and she's sat there, the pink one is what I'm thinking of, and she's just there and she's got the sleeve, the gloves, and she's in the light. It's wonderful. It's just, it also shows well it gets like, it drags a little bit because it's meant to be this like triumphant scene. She gets the dress. It's wonderful. You're wearing a dress. He's stitched your name into the dress. It says Alma. It's your dress. You're getting to wear the dress. And then she's being photographed all day and pushed and prodded, and the sister comes in and pulling it, and all of a sudden the reality kind of sets back in about, you know, what it is.
And you know, shout out to the costume designer too, Mark Bridges, who also did the costuming for The Master and has done and There Will Be Blood. So like numerous, you know, PTA films. He's worked kind of with the same crew, and this guy, you know, he did Magnolia also. So he's basically he goes way back. And I mean, imagine just being this costume designer, and finally Paul Thomas Anderson comes to you and he's like, you know, I really just want to make a movie about beautiful clothes. I mean, it's like it's the slam dunk to an award, right? Basically.
Can we talk about Jonny Greenwood?
Sure.
Because we didn't do it last time with The Master. I think that might be his best score, actually. But Jonny Greenwood, obviously the guitarist from Radiohead, he did the soundtrack for There Will Be Blood, The Master, Inherent Vice, and Phantom Thread. I think the music, the score in all of PTA's films are so important. I love The Master, that weird discordant rhythmic it's so good. Like after watching the movie again for this, I couldn't get it out my head, but I love the score in Phantom Thread as well. I love this. It's so haunting, and it's just there all of the time. It just really leading you through scene to scene. That it's the connective tissue of the movie. And I just think, wow, like what a fantastically talented musician. I mean, me and Duncan one time had an argument about who would be the most impactful band of all time. Would it be Oasis or would it be Radiohead? Duncan very
It's
much
Radiohead.
in the Oasis camp. Me in the Radiohead camp.
I will say, Richard,
don't say that. Duncan's gonna get you.
I like
I
Oasis.
would even listen to the last 3 albums of fucking Radiohead. I could make you go into Guantanamo Bay, making you listen to that. You absolute wankers. You wouldn't even listen to a second of them. You're only thinking about the middle period of them. You're full of shit. You're
I will say.
Could you even name any of the last 10 songs? You couldn't. You couldn't name one.
I will say I like Oasis better, but I think that Radiohead was more impactful. But anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, what Jonny Greenwood has gone on to do as a musician in terms of scoring movies, I think, these are his magnum opus. I mean, more than anything you could do. I mean, the soundtrack. Well, I remember when I heard the soundtrack to There Will Be Blood, I thought this is going to be like Tom Waits or someone. They've like dragged that old motherfucker out of his and because it's all banging drums and it's industrial and it really makes you it's evocative of oil and planting the fucking digging into the ground and all this stuff. He has this just incredible feel for what is going to be tonally appropriate for the movie he scores, and it's no wonder PTA has kind of like kept him around now. I mean, I didn't really like Inherent Vice. I think that's a very difficult film to enjoy, but you're adapting Thomas Pynchon, so what the fuck are you gonna do, right?
Why would you do that?
but yeah, exactly. But the score is really good. I'll say that the score might be the most enjoyable part of a very difficult movie to watch. But I mean, I think the score is brilliant in this movie, and we've done the whole arc without talking about Jonny Greenwood, and so I wanted to throw him out there. I don't know if the music spoke to you in Phantom Thread on the same level, but I think it's everything about this movie is like a really deliberate, sumptuous feast, and it's incredibly appropriate. It looks great, sounds great. Yeah, no, go on.
I've got a little bit I want to tie back into because we only briefly touched on that thing about his mother. Like, first of all, in that vision and in the whole movie, she never speaks. You know nothing about this person. She's just inferred she was very important to him. Well, that's another thing. Right after that sequence where he's ill like that in bed, there's all that interesting part where after that, when Alma is helping with the dress he can't work on, she finds that little thing he's sewn in because she's the only one who knows he does it, her and the civil person. And there's that little piece of like fabric where it just says never cursed, and then later on he makes that weird comment where he says something about how like the reason why he needs to like marry Alma is to like keep his sour heart. I can't remember what the line is or something, and then how he needs to break the curse or something. So you can tell also he on some level, by the way, also I think does think he's a cursed individual.
Sour heart from choking. To break a curse.
He's someone who can only do this brilliant dressmaking shit. He's never going to have a relationship. In fact, he's pretty much committed to the idea of not having one. And like we say, like that's what the whole first sequence with the woman is about. It's what Alma early on is all about. So to me, there's also an aspect there where if you want to tie into trauma, well, the classic line is always breaking the generational curse, isn't it? It's the idea you don't pass on to the next people what happened to you. You have to break it and cut the line off and fix and heal yourself in some way. Because it's funny. That's why I told you, to go back to the beginning, I didn't like this the first time. Because when I saw the ending, I was like, this is so fucked up though. But then you have to realize if these two people are this fucked up and needy but unable to get what they want from the essentially this is like the only that's why I say it's like a Cronenberg film. This is like a very dark compromise they've managed to find that does work though. It is efficacious. It does actually get them what they want. It's just again, it's one of those ones where you maybe just don't want to accept that that's how it goes. It's actually very dark to me.
Yeah. I mean, there's as with all things that PTA does, there is there are these weird little aspects of real life that he picks up and he puts into his movies. He's done that. Obviously, in Boogie Nights, for instance, it's about John Holmes. There's multiple scenes that are just lifted from the life of the porn star John Holmes. And Magnolia, obviously, takes, real life kind of freakish occurrences that he got from 40 and Times.
There's all the family elements here, so I'm guessing,
Yeah, absolutely. And this movie is no different. There's like some interesting little aspects. Like, you ever heard of a fashion? This will be more Christopher's wheelhouse, I imagine. But you ever heard of a fashion director called Alexander McQueen?
Yes, yeah,
You know this
of course.
guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, cool. So I mean, he's quite famously, he would stitch things into clothing he produced, and in an interview he said when he had to make a jacket for Prince Charles, and he stitched "I am a cunt" into it, you know. And anyway, this is a guy who tragically took his own life at, like, I don't know, he's only like 40 years old or something. And you know,
Prince Charles won that one then. There you go, 1-0 Charles.
yeah,
Or 2-1 at the end.
1-0
Maybe he came from
Charles.
behind, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe he came from behind. I'll give him the first score. He scored 1 goal, but came from behind like England.
So yeah, and obviously, you know, he'd recently lost his mother beforehand, and he was a very obsessive guy, and it's like you can see that PTA did go out, and you know, there's a ton of fucking crazy eccentric characters out there in the world of high fashion, because again, just think about what it is as a lifestyle, as a craft. And he observed these things and like really gave, again, I always use the word texture when you're talking about a PTA film. He doesn't have to spoon feed you stuff. It's like with the, you know, is he a bulimic? Is he not? Like I'm reading at the start of it. It's just there. It's just not going to be explored. It doesn't need to be explicit. And it's the same with a lot of these aspects. Like he takes real life anecdotes, just sprinkles them into the characters that he creates, and they feel lived. They feel genuine. Like, by the way, I mean, if I told you that this, and I think for all of PTA's films, if I told you it was like a biopic of like somebody famous, you wouldn't be surprised, right?
Well, I think PTA does
that feel.
He does a lot of research, and so obviously he did a lot of research on fashion designers heading into this, because he has all the traits that many of these fashion designers have. Except notably, I will say, being gay, which is Alexander McQueen was, for example, Yves Saint Laurent, you know, many famous fashion designers, and even you might potentially, you know, presume that at the start of the movie, because he's so fussy in many ways that he sometimes comes across as having some homosexual tendencies. And you know what's interesting is that he dates women, but he's not particularly interested in having sex with them. Like he charms Alma for quite a long time before it's implied that they actually have.
There isn't a sex scene.
There's no sex scene, but even the implication is he waits quite a long time to have sex with her before it's implied that they actually consummate. Right. So he seems kind of asexual in a way. It's more about the control, because it's about him being infantilized and having a mother. It's not about him having a female sexual partner.
Yeah, definitely. And look, I mean, we talked about like there is like this vague homoeroticism in the master, although, you know, I never really
there is an element of that. There is
an element there, yeah.
I mean, that's that old joke about Lord of the Rings. Like the modern day fucked up idiot writer can't conceive of a real male friendship. They must be gay.
Yeah,
it's like just that. And if you can't see the master as like two people who just found a connection of like platonic, then everything's about getting fucked up the arse to you, mate. I'd maybe go and see someone. It sounds like you've got some sort of an obsession, you know. Anal fixation, it sounds like.
Yeah, but I mean, I will say that you know, he is a brilliantly observed real character with all the brilliance and idiosyncrasies of somebody that you would kind of associate, you know, from that world. And this is why I just like PTA movies in general. Like even the movies of his that I don't like, you know, which again I've already talked about with, you know, obviously Inherent Vice. And to be fair, I didn't think Licorice Pizza was
okay.
Great. Yeah, it was okay. It's not a rewatch for me. But what I love about when you go from like, you know, Hard Eight and right the way through to Phantom Thread, all of his movies, the characters are so real. You find yourself, even if you can't relate to them because they're alien to you, they have this earnestness and they feel genuine, they feel real. And this is what I mean when I say all of his films almost feel like they could be historical biopics in some way, like There Will Be Blood, The Master, Punch Drunk Love, Boogie Nights. They're all like
inspired off of real events. Like he's making he makes a pastiche of real things that he finds interesting. I mean, what I find so phenomenal about this movie is he got an interest in fashion, decided to do all the research on fashion designers and fashion in the 50s. And he's like, you know what? What if I made this about poisoning each other with mushrooms and this fucked up relationship? Like, it's the twist he gives it and the lens he views it through.
Yeah.
Because as you guys pointed out, this could be a period piece. This could be a historical drama.
Yeah.
But it's not.
Yeah.
It is that, but it's so much more, and it's so much more interesting, right? And so he takes very specific historical events like Scientology, and he puts a very interesting twist on it. And Scientology is inherently interesting. I find, this world of high fashion and nobility in England in the 1950s very interesting, as did many of you, because how many people are fucking watching The Crown on Netflix, which is this exact time period, by the way, literally the exact time period. You could imagine him being in the world of The Crown, right? As a servant, as somebody who was one of the satellite characters, right? And this is a movie about him and about his relationships, but it's a fashion designer viewed through a very bizarre lens. And you could have taken this lens and viewed any other kind of relationship, because there's something deeply human about this, but it's so bizarre, right? But you could take almost any relationship and eat the mushroom thing, and it's still interesting, right?
Yeah, yeah, and look, I think with this, it's you can apply the label subversive to this movie, because you know how, like, I know this has become a bit of a meme these days, the subverting of expectations, right? Because obviously you're out there watching the fucking Acolyte.
The Power of Mandy. Have you watched it, Richard? Have you watched it? It's so bad.
The Boys, all that shit. Yeah.
Oh, The Boys is another one that's just completely jumped the shark down.
What you hoped would happen and the satisfying ending you never get. Etc. Sure.
Yeah, but I mean, this is what a subversion of expectations is meant.
This is a real one. Yeah, this is an authentic
exactly.
one, though.
This is what it's meant to look like. It's where you get partway through the movie and you go, oh, I thought I had a handle on this. I'm an hour in. She's poisoning him? Like, what's happening?
And he's like into it?
Yeah, it's just, that is like because up until that point, it looks like it is going to conform to a very traditional narrative. It looks like it is going to be that kind of slice of life, Romeo and Juliet-esque romance, yes.
But even like you say,
the highborn and the lowborn. Yeah,
exactly. How does she break through, or how does he go down to? You could have thought it was some of that too. Yeah.
They're going to fall out, and he's going at the end. He's going to make her a dress, and
it's like
you think I only want you to model for me, Alma.
You think it's going to be like some Love Actually bullshit, but it's definitely not.
Yeah. So it definitely isn't, and this is why, I mean, again, fuck, it's so rare movies do this to you these days. I remember the first time I watched this, I was like, I gotta be honest, guys, because I always give PTA. By the way, you have to give every PTA movie 2 watches.
You do. That's the message of this series we've done so far. Everything has to be
exactly. You must watch it at least twice. But I was kind of like, I could feel myself drifting. The first time I watched this film, I was like, yeah, Daniel Day-Lewis is excellent, and the actress that plays Alma's good, but where is this going? Probably nowhere I like. I don't really fuck with this kind of stuff. I would never watch The Crown or any of those period.
I'm a sucker for period dramas. So
Americans generally are.
I know, because we don't have that history. I will say that I think Downton Abbey is garbage, but I hate Downton Abbey. But love The Crown. Give me some fucking Gosford Park. That movie's actually a banger.
There you go. So as I was literally almost out of the film, and then just perfect. It just the twist, it is so good, and then all of a sudden I was like just fully engaged. Like, I want to see where this goes. Like, is she gonna kill him? Is like, where are we gonna go with this? Like, what is he gonna find out? How's he gonna react? And suddenly it just created all these like incredible threads where right up until the end, where you realize, oh my fucking god, she has completed him in the most horrible way imaginable. it was like, it was intriguing. And so and the first hour of build up, absolutely essential for the impact of the twist. So, I mean, it is a masterful exercise in storytelling, and so rare these days. Subverting your expectations is just, that thing you love. Well, what if it was shit? It's like, no, don't subvert my expectations like this.
That's even how you can tell, though, if the writer is good and has good intentions. It's one thing to subvert your audience in a way where it's going to make an awesome story in its own way that you don't expect. The people you're referring to clearly hate the source material, hate the fans, and subvert it like a spoiled orgasm that you didn't ask for. Just like, at the end, you don't get to come, see how you should. Because I could even see, to tie back into this film, I could already guarantee there'll be about 50 think pieces that are about, it's actually a metaphor for BDSM. Because again, there's people who are so broken in this world, they only think sex matters. They don't understand sex itself is an expression of what you do in a relationship, you cretin. The relationship is the greater thing, not what you do with your dick at the end of it all. So I would say, on one other thing I didn't bring up was there's another couple of quotes I thought were very telling, again, inferring like, what the fuck is this guy's past? But they don't ever tell you. There's that one where he says something like, if I don't protect myself, someone will come in the night and take over my corner of the room. What the fuck is that inferring, by the way? That's mad.
What does that even mean?
Well, that's very predictable of you. Don't act so tough. I know you are not.
Yeah, that's right, that's right. If I don't protect myself, somebody will come in the middle of the night and take over my corner of the room and ask me about their fucking asparagus.
And then also, like...
by the way, that goes back to my abuse theory, by the way.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. That's how it sounds like your dad comes in the night and then fucks you up or something, or makes you sleep in the corner or something.
Because it's weird that his one parental relationship is just a memory of his mom before she got married. It's almost like everything that happened before and after that was so fucked up he can't even think about it.
And then, as I say, when he's like being hysterical in his own phraseology, even though, by the way, you'll notice he remains very calm. He has that calmness as he's getting angry with you. That's really actually disturbing, by the way. It's that sort of thing where he could explode at any moment. He says that line, he goes, "Do you have a gun?" Then, by the way, also his accent in this movie fucking kills it. Like, he's perfected whatever British accent he's doing there. So fucking on point.
When the hell did this happen? Who are you? Do you have a gun? You here to kill me? Do you have a gun?
Stop it!
Where's your gun?
Stop being a child.
Where's your gun?
Stop
Show
playing.
me your gun.
Stop playing this game.
And so, on the PTA angle, I will say this. The theme of these movies is, yes, first of all, every PTA movie, you don't know if you like it till you watch it twice. That's just an obvious rule. We generally joke that it's like that on this series anyway, but that's actually more for like the way you study a film versus watch it. I think for PTA, like, again, too many people have been trained to want like a 3-act story and a happy ending and the transformation in the middle, and they only know a basic archetype, so they can't appreciate his films. Because I actually think PTA's biggest strength, aside from, again, by the way, notice at this point in his career, he's effortlessly making these on-film, special, incredibly high-quality image, amazing shots, everything. Like, his actual mastery of his own craft is fucking phenomenal by this point.
He was the cinematographer of this one, by the way, because his normal cinematographer wasn't even available. So he's like, fuck it, I'll do it. Like, that's even more amazing. It's like, directing it and writing it wasn't enough. He's like, well, I got this now. I mean, what a fucking baller of a guy.
Like, to me, his main strength as a director actually it's two things. One is the slow pacing. Notice every one of his movies now is 2 or 3 hours long. He'll never do a 90-minute, you end on that note, and it was just the traditional. It's always, and it allows him, like I say in the master, it allows him to be very indulgent. He really draws out scenes, the silences, the amount of silence in his films when two people are sat there. And remember, this is why it's so interesting to me that people do try to do that thing where they act like movies are all just degenerate in their nature. This is so jarring if you go watch a 1945 movie. Hey, what are you doing? Well, I'm just going to come later. Well, I'll see you later at 4:30. I'll see you too. And he's out the scene. Like, there's not a single scene like that in a single PTA movie. You'll never get that scene. It's all like drawn out. It's allowed to breathe. The pacing's mega. And I actually think his biggest strength is how he casts ensembles. Because even this one's an ensemble cast. He doesn't do the Hollywood thing of like, right, give me the one really good actor who's popular. And then, you know what? The producer can do the rest. You get the woman of the day, Sydney Sweeney, and then get like, fucking, I don't know, Chris Pratt. First of all, most of the best actors in his films, get that status from his films. He has a fucking unbelievable eye for talent. And then the people he puts in the central roles of his casts, he gets career performances out of all of them. It's unbelievable the way he's able to like somehow like the funny thing is that's where he collaborates. He clearly himself has a massive amount of control of the camera, the shot, the script, the pacing. But I'll tell you what, it's clear to me that with his main actors, it's collaborative. He is actually giving them input. They're allowed to do something interesting with the character. So no, I think it's fabulous. And by the way, if this really does end up being the last ever, there's not really like another wood cabin comes out of retirement moment for Daniel Day-Lewis. Mate, does he even need to do another film? He did it all. He did it all.
Yeah.
The highs were so many.
Well,
the highs at the top were unbelievable though.
At this point in time, I mean, this movie came out in 2017. He hasn't actually filmed a movie probably since 2016 when they were making this. So like, is he really, like, it's been 7-8 years at this point. Is he really going to come back? Seems unlikely, right? That's a long time to be out of the game.
Part of me low-key becomes like the hater I hate in sports. In sports, I always say you should never say someone should retire like Ronaldo, because for all you know, he might score one more great goal. Like, why would you take that away? The reason you want him to retire is so like a child, you can remember him at his best and never remember the latter days where he wasn't as good. Well, the reason why, for this one actor, I'm going to reverse that, and I don't want you to do any more movies. Because to tie back into what Richard said earlier, bro, if suddenly this guy did a cameo in like Guardians of the Galaxy 5, that would be like physical pain to me. That would be like someone nailing me to the wall, mate, if Daniel Day-Lewis ever sold out like that, did a movie just for money. So in a weird way, I mad admire that. As I say, I think he shares some qualities with the Reynolds character. I think he is a true like craftsman, artist, a guy, very, very extreme, but you see the heights you can reach when you do it your way.
I mean, put it this way. On a long enough time scale, all the people you love and adore that have enhanced your life with art, if they live long enough, they will fucking break your heart. And, you know, like Al Pacino, the go-to example is Al Pacino doing Jack and Jill, that fake Dunkin' Donuts advert where he does a Dunkachino, and he even parodies the Scarface thing, and he says, "Say hello to my chocolate blend." And it's, oh God, it's horrifying. It's horrifying that he did this. And you know, I don't want that for Daniel Day-Lewis. Like, for me, I think Daniel Plainview, I think that is his masterpiece. I think that is probably one of the greatest characters ever committed to cinema. It's not a coincidence that it was PTA that created it, and Daniel Day-Lewis brought it to life. I've never really fucked with the idea that Bill the Butcher was a good performance. I always thought it was
I mean, it's a bad movie. We can argue about the performance, but the movie is terrible.
Yeah, I think it's one of the best fun. Actually, that's my favorite of his for sure.
But for me, it's like you say. I mean, like, what more would this guy need to do in you know, he's up there with the greats. And low key, Phantom Thread, arguably a top 3 performance. I mean, it's really good. It's very good. So believable.
One thing I want to expand out here, because this is why it's mad to me that people are hating on it in the comments. I'm sorry, you're plebs. Here's why. Because since everyone in Hollywood and culture didn't tell you this guy's a genius, you didn't get it. Whereas when they tell you they're a genius, like Christopher Nolan, you like them all. What do you know? You think Oppenheimer was the movie of the year, don't you? Of course you do. Because you have to, you idiots. The fashionable opinion to have. The smart fashionable opinion, you know. So what I would say is this. Another conclusion I've taken away. I used to say this guy's one of my favorite directors. Bro, Paul Thomas Anderson, you watch this series we've done. He's a top 5 director ever. He's in my like elite list now, mate. It's highs again. They're insane. They're insane. Like, if you're a director, you look for 1 or 2 of these in your career, not like 5 or 6.
Well, the reason he stands out is because, you know, we lost the auteur era. You know, after what happened when, you know, there was so many high profile fucking flops, and, you know, this is all, you know, documented in the excellent book, Easy Riders, Raging Bulls. There was so many like high profile flops and people out of control and big projects that didn't get returns. And the studio system moved away from the, you know, auteur as an idea.
The joke, Richard, would be the mistake they made was they misdiagnosed a symptom for the illness. So the problem they have is they think that it's an auteur gets out of control and wastes all your money. No, think of the time, Richard. It's people on cocaine waste your money, which bullshit ideas that they then just think are awesome, and then they didn't come down before they watched the end of the movie and edited.
Yeah.
Like, I think the difference is,
although I would
Thomas
add
Anderson,
cocaine absolutely essential.
depends on the movie you're making.
That
You know,
era.
if you're making Beverly Hills Cop, probably
you know.
should have a bit, a little Mountain of Snow in the background. Well, I think Paul Thomas Anderson shows you what a sober, responsible author could do, and you can't do this with a committee. You can't do this with a Hollywood scriptwriting machine. You can't do it.
No.
Yeah,
I mean, I pointed out early on,
this
and
is why PTA stands out now.
I pointed out early on that he's never had $100 million budget in his entire career, which is like really crazy considering the amount of $100 million budgets they're throwing around these days.
Actually succeed, by the way. Have any of his movies ever actually made loads of money?
I mean, not loads, but I don't think. Because I did.
No, they've all made money basically. They've all made some amount of money, but they've all made a profit, but not a lot.
But he's never had a crazy success story.
No, but it's the next movie that he's making, the one that actually does have $100 million budget for the first time in his career. And this is the one with Leonardo DiCaprio that's supposed to be coming out later in 2025. Doesn't have a name yet, but it has Leonardo DiCaprio, Regina Hall, Sean Penn, Alana Haim, who's from Licorice Pizza, and then Benicio del Toro. So, I mean, this movie, we don't know anything about it, but it has a much larger budget.
There you go. Inherent Vice and Licorice Pizza both lost money.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, like I'm intrigued. Like a big budget movie with Leonardo DiCaprio, and obviously
I see that
like
being an amazing performance. Potentially, maybe he brings Sean Penn back to being not a retard.
I mean, come on, he's only human. He's only human.
He's another guy where low key, if he'd had died in some small plane crash in about 1997, what a great actor, right? Fucking dope guy. Again, don't ever look at anything he's ever said outside of his films. What a fucking dope actor. Really cool. I can't wait to see what he's done.
His weird drug lord interviews with El Chapo and Rolling Stone. What the fuck was that?
I'm gonna say this about fucking Sean Penn. Like, yeah, he was like, I had a bit of a man crush on him. He did some fucking insane fucking.
Bro, when he was in like The Thin Red Line, I think he's unbelievable. At his peak, if he hadn't become an idiot, he was fucking dope. He really was really good.
Thin Red Line, Mystic River, 21 grams.
Oh,
milk.
21 grams is so trash, man.
It's all right.
Man.
Okay.
He's good in 21 grams.
He's good. The movie's
good. He's good. Like, he's good in Milk. I don't fucking sit down and watch fucking Milk over and over again on endless loop. He's fucking good in it though. And obviously Carlito's Way. He's fucking magnum opus.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, he's magnum opus. Davey fucking Kleinfeld, the ultimate lawyer before Better Call Saul.
Reminds me of all the OGs in esports, but that's enough about that. That's all.
Yeah. So I mean, look, I'm intrigued. I mean, look. Sort of getting towards putting a pin in it all. I know, obviously, the people that have come along for this arc, I think, I've looked at the comments. I've seen some bizarre comments. I've seen people say There Will Be Blood isn't a good movie, and they're glad we didn't cover it. You're wrong. You're just objectively wrong. It's one of the greatest films ever made. It's mad you would ever have that opinion. But I'll also say this. I mean, in terms of like interesting directors that create movies that feel like relics from a bygone era in terms of quality and the bold themes they explore and the incredible performances and the unabashed use of ensemble casts, which in general, think about what we said about Dune and how the ensemble cast for me personally was one of the things that ruined those movies. It kept constantly taking me out of it because it's like, oh, it's this person from that film and it's this person from that film and here's fucking this actor, and it sort of ruined it. Here's Christopher Walken playing Christopher Walken. It ruined it. PTA movies don't do that. I mean, like, he gets stellar performances from every actor he uses, and the movies, they're going to resonate. These are films you will always come back to. I think if you bounce off Phantom Thread now, I would just urge you, like, give it a year or two and come back to it and see where you're at. I mean, mentally.
I also
and how it resonates with you.
Look, I mean, I understand, like, people. Magnolia is very long, and like we said, I like that movie, but they probably could have cut some out of that, and it is very complicated with all the characters.
And I'll be honest, I did find some of it, like, as I've got a little bit older and kind of realized how real life actually operates.
Yeah,
there was there's some aspects of it that lean towards the melodramatic that doesn't necessarily ring true, and that's fine.
However, The
Boogie
Master and
Nights
Phantom Thread are just amazing. And like, you know, if you didn't like Magnolia, you might actually enjoy those two films, because I think they remove all of the kind of less good parts of Magnolia and keep all of the very good parts.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you did enjoy The Master, you're 100% going to enjoy this. And you should definitely view these as essentially companion pieces. Like, in terms of movies about, like, the complexities of human interplay and the way that we interface with life itself and how we get from one point to another, how we get from the start to the end in our own stories. I think PTA gets it, that there isn't a neatness to real life. It just doesn't work like that. And we're constantly evolving and adapting to stimuli we expose ourselves to, sometimes deliberately and sometimes accidentally. And so the Master for me is, again, about what it is to be a broken free spirit. The Phantom Thread is what it is to be somebody that is so tightly wound and focused, what it is to have that element of control wrestled from you, and how freeing and liberating that can be in and of itself. So these are incredibly profound films with wonderful performances, and you know, if you don't like them, that's fine. I guess you'll get there eventually. These are movies made by a director at the absolute height of his craft, and the quality will eventually come through for you, even if you initially bounce off them.
Or if you don't get them, just go rewatch Dune 1 and 2, you twat. Hey, there's your 10 out of 10 movies. By the way, we've got mini Roger Eberts in our comment section. Get the fuck out.
I just love, like, we definitely picked a more difficult director than Villeneuve. Like, we picked all these, like, big films that Villeneuve had done that were very topical, and then we just went down the rabbit hole. And, like, I mean, if you don't like that, guys, you're not going to like this show, because we're going to keep picking weird shit or more fringe shit from time to time. You're going to have a balance of, like, things that are, you know, conventionally lauded or big budget Hollywood movies or classics, and some really niche stuff. So it's about the ride, right? We're not here just to give opinions on everything that is popular that's what we do with the other show, Nerd Legion. Actually, a lot of stuff isn't even popular. It's just around. I wouldn't say The Acolyte is popular.
I mean, I gotta say, I've been obviously watching Nerd Legion, and I don't know how you've done The Acolyte. Like, I wanna commend you and Doa for getting that, because Star Wars, you have to understand, like, I never really felt Star Wars was that good. Right, and never really, you know, I could take or leave Star Wars. Yeah, I liked it as a kid, and you know,
sure.
I did the prequels, obviously. But after this most recent trilogy, it died once Ryan Johnson got his hands on it.
My opinion
is got his wish.
My opinion is that Star Wars has 2.5 good movies. Right?
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah, which is fine.
I mean, even the good is exaggerated, as in they're good movies. Like, you might like them. Some of it's guilty pleasure, like being a kid. Yeah. The problem is this is why Star Wars. It's not the fault. Like I'm not doing that shit take of Star Wars is always bad, because that, by the way, is the giveaway. The modern writers hate Star Wars and hate Star Wars fans. The problem is, though, because you watch them when you're a boy, they're not top 10 movies of all time. That's my problem. No. If you just want to say they're good and like one or two of them are really good, but even then,
I mean, Empire Strikes Back
pleasure. That still wouldn't even be close to the top 10 or the top 50. Like, I could go hundreds of movies. You know what I mean? So that's what I mean. Like, they're good, but the problem is people have elevated those to a state I do think is ridiculous.
Yeah,
like that's like the person who also thinks Batman Begins is like a top 10 movie. It's like, just get out.
Like we did, you know, like we did until we watched it again. But I'll say, like, I mean, for me, the Indiana Jones trilogy was always better than the Star Wars trilogy. So
that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. But anyway,
probably also 2.5 good movies in Indiana Jones. He's offended.
You hate Temple of Doom.
I think it's okay.
Hate Temple of Doom.
I think it's all right.
You hate Temple of Doom. It's
way worse than it's way worse than the other two.
I don't even think that's true. I don't.
You hate The Matrix, Richard. Whatever.
Yeah, I do hate the Matrix. The Matrix is garbage.
I did
not just the trilogy, the first one.
The first one's great, and I did, by the way, put that on my list of films that because I know you hate that. If I don't think Thorin hates it though, so.
I think it's amazing, but this will be a whole separate video. The reason it's amazing is I will allege they plagiarized the whole thing, and that's why all the other movies were trash, because the rest of it was them. So I think what they did is steal from a lot of comics and anime, and then they did a great job of that first one because it wasn't their shit. And then when they had to express their voice, it became, by the end, that fucking like Resurrections one's beyond offensive.
Where he's like Jesus, he's like, they're carrying him in the crossbow. Oh God, it's so bad. It's so bad.
Oh wait, no, I've seen it. What's the fourth one? I've seen the third one. And I never watched Matrix.
Reloaded? No, what the
Reloaded is the second one.
Reloaded is second.
Revolutions is
Revolutions. There you go.
Revolutions third. Right,
Resurrected then I think is the one I mean. The one that had like Barney from fucking I Met Your Mother in. That one is utter trash.
No, I didn't. I've never actually seen the fourth movie, so I'm very good for the most part. I'm very good for the most part. If like once something's bad, I just don't keep watching those movies.
It's like I told you. I saw the fucking third Matrix in the cinema, and it's like obviously. I lived in Middlesbrough when these movies were coming out, and I've told you before about like when I saw the fucking third Vader, the third Revenge of the Sith, and Vader comes out, where is Padme? Somebody just literally behind me stood up and went, "Fuck off!" they just had enough. Like they were out. Yeah, but like obviously in the fucking third Matrix one, there was just somebody next to me going, "Man, this is fucking shite." It's just like. Yeah, it is. This is terrible. This is.
No, I've told this joke before. Yeah. When the Rage Against the Machine track kicked in on the third one, I remember turning to the person I went with and went, "Bro, for one sick movie, they tricked us into watching two shit movies. Like, why did we do the sunken cost fallacy? Like, why did we think the third one would save it? Like, we've now just watched like 4 hours of shit for 2 hours that was good, and that was ages ago now. I've got to go pretty soon, so we're going to wrap this.
All right.
Yeah,
so anyway, guys,
let's wrap it.
We will see you for the next arc, which is the hatred arc. We will start with them getting mad at me for making them watch The 13th Warrior again. Both of you guys have seen that movie, right?
Oh yeah,
a long time ago.
Okay,
a long time ago. Yeah, it's not on a regular rewatch list for some reason. Yeah.
So we'll start with The 13th Warrior. You know, when I've been talking about that on my stream, a lot of people actually really like that movie. So I think it'll be fun for the fans as well, because they're anticipating it getting ripped apart. So there are a lot of
acolytes of that movie. Yeah.
They are eagerly looking forward to it getting roasted. I know. So we will see you, and then obviously after that we'll do Revolver, the Guy Ritchie movie. So those will be the next two for us, and we'll see you then.